There is a presence that exists beyond the five senses. It's not confined to a building, a book, or even a belief. It is ever present, all-knowing, and deeply personal. Some call it spirit, others source, but today we speak of it as the Holy Spirit, not as dogma, but as a living, breathing intelligence. And this intelligence, this energy, is not just around you, it is within you. It's encoded in your very being, waiting to be awakened. To understand the Holy Spirit in a way that truly empowers us, we must first expand our perception of reality. The world as we see it is not the whole story. Everything you perceive with your senses, your body, your environment, the people around you, makes up only a fraction of what is real. Beneath this material world lies a vast field of energy and information. In science, we call this the quantum field. It is invisible, infinite, and filled with potential. This is where the Holy Spirit resides, not confined to matter, but flowing through all things, operating through frequencies, intelligence, and intention. The Holy Spirit is not separate from the quantum field. It is the intelligence behind the field. It is the organizing force behind life itself. Every time a wound heals, a heart forgives, a life transforms. This is not random. This is divine order in motion. This is the work of the Spirit, orchestrating complexity with precision beyond what the conscious mind can comprehend. Now imagine this: your thoughts, your emotions, your beliefs. They don't just stay inside of you. They emit a signal, a vibration, a frequency. When you live in fear, anger, or doubt, you send out a low, incoherent signal. But when you live in gratitude, love, trust, you emit a high frequency signal that begins to resonate with this divine intelligence. When your internal world becomes coherent, your thoughts, your emotions, your intentions, you create the perfect conditions for the Holy Spirit to flow through you. You become a receiver of divine intelligence. Not metaphorically, literally, you are tuning yourself like a radio to a signal that's always been broadcasting, but you've been too distracted, too emotional, too controlled by survival mode to hear it. This is not mysticism. This is energetic alignment. You don't have to chase the Spirit. You have to match its frequency. That's why silence is powerful. That's why meditation works. That's why intentional prayer isn't about begging for change, but aligning with the power that already knows how to change everything. When you enter into stillness and surrender your analytical mind, you move beyond time, beyond logic. You enter the eternal now, the present moment, where the Holy Spirit lives. And in that moment, miracles are not only possible, they become probable. What does this look like biologically? The brain moves from high beta stress, survival, into alpha and eventually theta, the creative, receptive states. The heart begins to beat in rhythm, the nervous system comes into balance, the body relaxes, and the mind opens. That's when intuitive insights begin to flow. That's when healing begins. That's when you feel connected to something greater. The Holy Spirit does not need your struggle to work. It needs your coherence. It needs your willingness. It needs you to get out of the way. Because when you're living by the hormones of stress, the body is in a state of emergency. In that state, you're not concerned with growth or wholeness. You're concerned with survival. You're not tuning into divine wisdom. You're just trying to make it through the day. But when you elevate your state, through breath, through stillness, through love, you enter the dimension where the Spirit can guide you. You become a conduit for possibility. And here's the truth. The Holy Spirit doesn't just want to visit you during moments of crisis. It wants to dwell in you. It wants to partner with you. But it can only meet you at the level of your awareness. If you're living in reaction to your environment, stuck in the past, obsessed with the future, you're not present enough to connect. Presence is the password. Coherence is the key. And when the spirit finds you in that state, it begins to rewire your biology for healing, your perception for clarity, your future for breakthrough. It starts to orchestrate new synchronicities, new ideas, new people, and new doors. The ego is a beautiful tool when it's understood, but a brutal master when it's left unchecked. The ego isn't evil, it's a program. It's your identity created through experiences, memories, labels, wounds, and conditioned beliefs. It's the part of you that says, "This is who I am," even when who you are is wrapped in limitation, pain, and protection. The ego exists to keep you safe, but safety is not the same as truth, and it's definitely not the same as freedom. When you live through the ego, you are constantly defending a version of yourself that was built in reaction to the past. The ego is obsessed with control. It needs predictability. It craves validation. It fears uncertainty. Why? Because to the ego, change equals death. If you evolve, then the identity the ego constructed begins to dissolve. And that feels like threat. But here's the paradox. The very thing your ego fears is the very thing your soul is asking for transformation. The spirit cannot fully express itself through a mind controlled by the ego. Why? Because the spirit speaks in stillness. It speaks in love. It speaks in infinite potential. The ego, however, speaks in stories. It speaks in limitation. It speaks in survival. Surrendering the ego isn't about losing yourself. It's about losing who you are not. It's about laying down the armor, the stories, the reactions, and the identity that was built to survive, but was never meant to thrive. When you surrender the ego, you make space for the authentic self to rise. You create room for the divine intelligence of the Holy Spirit to move through you without resistance. But let's understand what surrender truly means. It's not giving up. It's giving over. It's not passive, it's conscious. You are choosing to release the need to be right, to be in control, to be seen a certain way, or to get a certain outcome. You're letting go of the illusion that you must handle everything through force, logic, or effort. You are yielding to something wiser, more intelligent, more expansive than the self that was shaped by fear. This process is biological. When you surrender, your body shifts. The sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response, begins to quiet. Cortisol levels drop. The breath deepens. Your brain moves out of high beta and into alpha and theta waves, where receptivity increases and creativity is unlocked. The heart becomes more coherent. You move out of survival and into creation. In that moment, your body is no longer signaling to the brain that you're in danger. Instead, it begins to signal safety, openness, presence. That's when the Spirit has space to speak. It's not that the Holy Spirit ever stops speaking. It's that most of the time we're too loud inside to hear it. The ego fills the inner space with chatter. What they said, what might go wrong, how you're not enough, how you must prove yourself. It creates noise. Surrender is silence. It's the sacred pause where the false self loosens its grip and the true self begins to breathe. You may feel resistance when you begin this practice. The ego will fight to survive. It may disguise itself as logic, doubt, or even spiritual pride. But your job is not to battle the ego. It's to become aware of it, to observe it, because when you observe it, you are no longer it. You are the consciousness behind the identity. And that's where your power begins. You begin to ask better questions. Not how do I get more, but who am I becoming? Not how do I avoid pain, but what is this pain trying to teach me? You begin to see that surrender doesn't shrink you, it expands you. Because when you release the need to defend your identity, you begin to align with your essence, and your essence is infinite. When the ego is silent, the spirit is loud, but it speaks in feelings, in visions, in knowing, in synchronicities. It guides you in directions your logical mind would never dare to go, yet somehow everything begins to align. Why? Because you're no longer pushing against life. You're moving with the current of divine intelligence. True alignment doesn't come through force. It comes through frequency. When you stop trying to control every outcome and start aligning your state of being, your thoughts, emotions, and intentions, with love, trust, and gratitude, you magnetize new realities. The ego manifests from lack. The spirit creates from fullness. The ego needs a plan. The spirit needs your permission. You cannot create a new reality while being the same person emotionally. That's the fundamental truth that many overlook when they seek transformation. Most people try to change the external world while clinging to the same thoughts, the same moods, the same energetic patterns. But your outer world is not separate from your inner world. It is a reflection of it. The invisible creates the visible. The cause is internal. The effect is what you see. So if you want to access the divine, if you want to live a life that reflects your higher potential, you must first go inward. You must change your inner state. Let's talk about what that really means. Your inner state is the combined result of your thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and physiological signals. It is the energetic signature you are broadcasting into the field. And that field, what some call the quantum field, others call the spirit, is always responding, not to what you want, but to what you are. That's why trying to force outcomes through sheer effort doesn't work when you're operating from fear, frustration, or doubt. You may be acting differently, but if your inner world hasn't changed, if you're still rehearsing the emotions of the past, you're sending a mixed signal into the field, and the field doesn't respond to masks. It responds to truth. Changing the inner state means making a conscious decision to no longer let the past dictate the present. It means shifting from being a victim of circumstances to becoming the creator of experiences. It requires emotional intelligence, mental discipline, and energetic awareness. But most importantly, it requires elevation. You cannot access the divine while tuned into survival. You must move beyond the hormonal chaos of stress beyond cortisol, adrenaline, and hypervigilance, and step into elevated emotions, gratitude, love, joy, compassion. These are not soft words, these are powerful frequencies. They are keys to the door that opens the connection to the divine intelligence within and all around you. When you generate these elevated emotions without needing something external to justify them, you become powerful. You are no longer waiting for life to give you a reason to feel whole. You are choosing to feel whole now, and that choice, that internal shift, is a signal to the field that you are ready to receive. This is not about pretending to be happy. It's about becoming so present, so aware of your inner world, that you can consciously elevate your emotional state. It starts with the breath. It continues with the body. It deepens with intention. When you begin to breathe slowly and deeply, you signal to your body that you are safe. That safety creates coherence between the heart and the brain. When the heart is coherent, it produces an electromagnetic field measurable up to several feet beyond the body, and that field begins to carry the frequency of your intention. This is not imagination, it is interaction. You are interacting with the intelligence that knows how to heal, how to organize, how to bring order from chaos. That intelligence is not outside of you, it's the divine. And it speaks the language of energy, The body begins to change when the inner state is sustained. Neurons fire in new patterns. Epigenetic signals switch on dormant genes. Hormones of health and regeneration are released. You're not only thinking differently, you're becoming chemically and biologically different. The body starts to reflect the mind. The material begins to reflect the immaterial. That is how spiritual truth becomes physical transformation. You are no longer conditioned by the old emotions of the past. You are conditioned by the future you've already stepped into, and that future is not some distant event. It's an inner reality that you are rehearsing now. By becoming familiar with joy, gratitude, and peace in the absence of external stimulus, you train your body to believe that the miracle has already happened. And when the body believes, the mind follows. The spirit responds. It is in this space beyond time and form, this eternal present, that the divine becomes accessible, not as a concept, but as a living experience. You don't have to chase signs. You don't have to beg for answers. When you change your inner state, you become the doorway. You become the invitation, and through you, the intelligence of the divine flows naturally. The brain is not hardwired. That's the old model. That's the belief we were handed for decades, that we are born with a fixed neural structure, that who we are is biologically predetermined, and that change is difficult, if not impossible. But modern neuroscience has dismantled that lie. The truth is, your brain is plastic. It is constantly being shaped, molded, and rewired by your thoughts, emotions, and experiences. And the most powerful tools you have for rewiring your brain are faith and intention. Let's first define what these words truly mean, not in a religious context, but in an energetic one. Faith is not blind belief. It is an emotional frequency. It's the act of trusting in a reality that you cannot yet see with your eyes, but feel with your heart. It is the elevated inner knowing that something greater is orchestrating events in your favor, even when there's no evidence yet on the outside. Faith, in the language of the brain, is the rehearsal of a future reality before it has physically manifested. And that rehearsal rewires you. Intention is focused energy. It's more than just wanting something. It is the act of becoming crystal clear on a desired outcome, and holding that outcome in your awareness long enough, consistently enough, that your brain begins to map it neurologically. With repetition, neurons that fire together begin to wire together. Intention is the steering wheel. Faith is the fuel. Together, they reshape your internal landscape. Now, here's the science. Every thought you think creates a chemical. Every emotion you feel reinforces a neural network. When you think the same thought and feel the same emotion over and over again, you begin to hardwire that pattern into your brain. It becomes automatic. That's how habits are formed. That's how identities are built. And that's why so many people feel stuck. Because they've unknowingly rehearsed limitations for years, turning them into a neurological and emotional prison. But the same mechanism that created the pattern can undo it. That's the miracle. You can choose a new thought. You can choose a new emotion. And the moment you combine a clear intention with an elevated emotion, such as faith, gratitude, or love, you begin to signal new genes in new ways. You begin to fire and wire new circuits in the brain. You literally become a different version of yourself. This isn't wishful thinking. This is neuroplasticity. The brain does not care whether an experience is happening physically or mentally. It responds the same. So when you mentally rehearse your future, when you visualize your healing, when you feel gratitude as if your prayer has already been answered, you're installing new hardware. You're teaching your body to emotionally experience the future before it arrives. And the body, which is the unconscious mind, begins to believe it is already living that new reality. That is how change becomes sustainable. You're not just hoping for something different. You're becoming someone different. When you live by faith and intention, you move out of the old programs of survival. You break the addiction to stress. You stop waiting for external circumstances to shift before you feel empowered. You generate empowerment internally. You rise above the known and begin to walk into the unknown. And in the unknown, all possibilities exist. This is where spirit meets you, in the space beyond logic, beyond reason, beyond the past. The brain, now rewired to match the frequency of your desired future, becomes a receiver for insight, creativity, and intuitive wisdom. You begin to think thoughts you've never thought before. You begin to feel emotions you've long forgotten. You start to see evidence of change, not because you forced it, but because you aligned with it. The subconscious mind, which has been conditioned for years by past pain, trauma, and fear, begins to be overwritten. Each moment you choose faith over fear, each time you hold an intention longer than your doubt, you are loosening the neural ties that anchor you to the old self. You are weakening the circuits of guilt, shame, resentment, and lack. And as those circuits begin to atrophy from disuse, new ones begin to form. Ones based on trust, wholeness, expansion, and divine possibility. You are not waiting on a miracle. You are rehearsing the conditions that allow the miraculous to find you. The more you practice this, intentionally, consistently, with elevated emotion, the more your inner world begins to broadcast a new signal into the field. And the field, which is always listening, always responding, begins to arrange people, opportunities, events, and synchronicities in alignment with your newly wired identity. A miracle is not an interruption of natural law. It is the result of alignment with higher laws, spiritual laws, energetic principles, and divine intelligence that far exceed the boundaries of logic, time, and reason. Miracles are not rare events reserved for the chosen. They are natural outcomes when the conditions are right, and those conditions are internal. To receive a miracle, you must first become the environment where miracles can manifest. You must become a vessel. A vessel is not the source of power, it is the channel through which power flows. And to be that channel, you must be willing to empty yourself of everything that blocks the current of divine intelligence. Fear, doubt, unforgiveness, control, identity attachments. These are the obstructions that clog the vessel. The spirit cannot flow freely through a mind obsessed with outcomes or a heart filled with bitterness. It moves where there is openness, trust, coherence, and surrender. So becoming a vessel for miracles begins with purification, not moral purification, but energetic purification. You must become aware of the internal signals you are broadcasting. If your frequency is rooted in past trauma, if your thoughts are consumed by lack, if your emotional body is locked in defense, you are tuned into the signal of the old self, and that self is not compatible with the miraculous. Miracles require a new signal, a new self, not one built through effort or performance, but one formed through transformation. It's the you who is free from stories, the you who has released the grip of certainty, the you who no longer needs to micromanage every outcome. This version of you is not reaching, it is receiving. The process is both neurological and spiritual. When you quiet the mind and center the heart, you bring the brain and body into coherence. You move from high beta brain waves, associated with stress and overthinking, into alpha and eventually theta, the realm of creativity and intuitive access. Your brain stops predicting danger and begins imagining possibility. The nervous system shifts from survival into regulation. The immune system reboots. The emotional body calms. In this state, the door to the subconscious opens. And that's where the transformation begins. The subconscious is the operating system. It houses the memories, habits, and beliefs that shape your external reality. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. So to become a vessel, you must recondition the subconscious with new beliefs, that healing is natural, that abundance is your birthright, that love is always available, that the spirit is within and not apart from you. Every time you imagine a future where you are already whole, already fulfilled, already free, and feel it in your body, you are impressing that vision onto the subconscious, and the body begins to believe. This internal coherence broadcasts a frequency into the quantum field, coherent signal that matches the vibration of your desired reality, and that field, which is alive with infinite potential, begins to respond. New opportunities, ideas, relationships, and breakthroughs start to emerge, not because you chased them, but because you became magnetically aligned with them. This is how miracles begin, not by striving, but by becoming. By turning your body into the instrument, your mind into the receiver, your heart into the transmitter. When you wake up in the morning and instead of remembering who you were, you intentionally choose who you are becoming, you are creating a neurological and energetic signature that invites the miraculous. And when that internal signature becomes more familiar than your past, it becomes the new baseline. The miraculous does not require perfection. It requires presence. It requires faith in what you cannot yet see, and gratitude as if it has already arrived. Gratitude is the evidence of receiving. When you feel it deeply before the thing shows up, you collapse time. You signal to the field that the event has already occurred, and the body, no longer waiting, begins to embody the future in the present moment. The vessel doesn't need to perform, it needs to align, and when alignment becomes a state of being, not a temporary moment but a daily practice, you become the space through which divine intelligence expresses itself. Your life becomes a reflection of what's happening in the invisible realm, and what once seemed impossible becomes normal, because you are no longer asking for miracles. You are embodying the frequency where miracles live.